Hello and welcome to Geek First Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the Geek First Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Hartcaster. Dylan Mustang with me, the Clown Prince of Podcasts. We got no nicknames today, just the classics. How you doing tonight?
Good. I try to use it, a lot more lately too. I feel like I guess it's not a good thing to slack or a bad thing because you get lots of nicknames you want to use them. But now I'm like trying to try to throw it out there once a week. I used it so much and everything. And today there wasn't a specific, huge topic. So I'm like, I'll bust it out here, so.
Yeah, I feel like this week we're kind of scratching the bottom of the barrel a little bit. There's not too much in the news world, which is very understandable. Post non E3 there's just not a whole lot going on. There's going to be some releases soon and whatnot, and then I'm sure things will pick up. And I don't know, Nintendo's bound to do something at some point here with some announcements. So
I heard there's like a direct this week. There's been a scooper saying that, but like it's like just like a regular, like here's some minor updates and stuff like that. Nothing crazy. So
I've been wondering because their next big title is Pikmin 4, which isn't it's not a Mario, it's not a Zelda, but it's still a big deal for them. And I know they just dropped a new trailer like on Twitter like a couple weeks ago, which to me was kind of like, that's kind of weird. If you're like gonna do a direct, why would you just drop this random trailer that seems kind of un-Nintendo like? But then I also was kind of like, man, I feel like they would want to wait until after Pikmin before they do another direct, start marketing a bunch of stuff. So I don't really know what they're gonna do. And I mean, you're right, I did see those rumors too, but I also feel like those rumors kind of exist every week of every month of every year for Nintendo. There's always someone spilling some direct beans, but I would be down to see it. I guess we don't really know of like a huge fall release at this point, do we? From them
for the dough, I don't think so. No, I don't. And I'm just trying to wrap my head is all around like it's mostly the third party stuff. I guess it's first party, right? Because I'm still trying to get used to the whole Bethesda Xbox thing because I always think of Starfield as a Y run, but I guess that's a specific one. But I don't think there's anything massive for Nintendo, so I'm not sure. I don't think there's going to be anything. I think if there's anything cooking, it's probably like Pikmin style. Like I don't think it's anything too big, but you never know. There's been sometimes maybe there's like another remaster or something like that in the works. Maybe they're gonna bring back Mario All Stars to sell again for which they should have. I know they like had a limited time, but they should have had that thing busting around when the Mario movie was out. I feel like they would have made a lot of bank, but
for sure.
They don't care because they're making money all the time. So
yeah, they put some like the Mario games on sale, but they definitely should have brought that one back for a limited time. Muds just bought a Switch today.
Oh.
She's been talking about it for a while, and she just kind of bit the bullet. She got the Switch OLED, which that screen is looking really nice.
That's good.
Playing some Animal Crossing right now. But yeah, she's got her own Switch now. So it's one of those things where it's Nintendo, they don't need to do anything. Like, people are still buying Switches, even though there hasn't... I guess Tears of the Kingdom was just a big, huge release. But even if they have like a quiet few months, it's... The Switch, the sales are just insane and nonstop.
Yeah, I know. It's always like when I hear these rumors of them, like now the rumor is it's not until like April 2024 where we might get some new hardware. But whenever I hear that, I just go, I don't even think you need to, because I feel like sometimes...
I feel like they just keep kicking that can. Like there's no urgency to it.
And I honestly do feel like sometimes new hardware can slow down sales a little bit because you get that feeling of like, oh, are we starting to move on from a generation? Are we gearing up for like the next thing? And honestly, if they're smart, like I think like Nintendo and graphics, they can have some beautiful looking games, but sometimes there's like a bar. But I don't think that's why people are playing Nintendo games and stuff like that.
They're
right?
the king of 30 frames per second over there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's coming back. Starfield, I'm sure there's other games going to be locked at 30 frames per second and stuff. So no, I just feel like they should just coast as long as they can while this is like even then like I wonder what they will do next because it's classic Nintendo. Maybe they wouldn't, but I feel like whatever it is, like let's say not like a Switch Ultra or whatever, Switch Elite, whatever they call it, the next console, I really feel like they should not move away from this type of setup. I feel like it's been a massive success, and like I don't they had to sacrifice the Wii U to get here, so may as well ride it out. I just don't know, like, would you see them going back to just a regular console with no screen and handheld attached? I feel like that'd be odd.
It's hard to come up with a reason why, but Nintendo is so weird, right? Like whenever you're trying to put the pulse on like what they're gonna do next, they come out and do something weird. And maybe the Switch has been around for so long now and it's so established and people understand it that Nintendo is just like bored of that, and they just want to go on to make some other weird, unique thing that only they would do. But yeah, I do feel like it would be pretty hard for them to go back to a home console, handheld console. And maybe that's just the thing. Maybe the Switch becomes like the handheld and they just keep doing that, but then they have some other home console alongside it instead of like specifically a 3DS equivalent, like an actually like only handheld machine. But yeah, it's Nintendo, so who knows what they're going to do.
I know, that's why I asked, because you would think it's the obvious, but no, they'll put out some console that'll bomb, and then the next console after that will be mega hit. You never know. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone just wants a stronger Switch, but I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know if that's just people who are so into these games and really want just them to look even better and have better frame rates and all that stuff. But anyway, some other
nice little mini topic there. Yeah.
I know. I like a little
direct
little
coming
side
soon.
there.
I bet. I'll say this week. That's my prediction.
Speaking of Nintendo, if you want to get a very special episode, head over to our Patreon. Help us hit our goal of 50 patrons by the end of July 31st, and we're going to make 5 very special, bigger, juicy episodes, and one of them is doing a full-out Nintendo Cinematic Universe, what that will look like for 15, 20 projects, who knows, maybe even more. So if you want to get that episode, head over there, help us out, and we'll make that along with the top 15 game ranking for all of us, which isn't much need here. It's been a while since we've done one of those, and then some other episodes as well.
Any tier as well. Doesn't matter. Just
exactly.
Any tier. Yeah.
We just want you in the door. We want you to check it out, and I promise you, once you're on the Patreon, you won't want to let go of it because we do tons of other stuff. Episodes early and ad free the feed, or just early access to all sorts of retrospectives. Some things you get years early, such as Lord of the Rings, or I guess The Hobbit more specifically, and things like X-Men, where that's, I guess, probably almost going to be a year early from when we started releasing those to when that show is going to be coming out. Other things happening on the feed. It's been a pretty busy week here. The Flash review, you guys did that. And then I heard you did a Travis Told You this morning that I was listening to, where you were talking more about the Flash and the sales there. Do you think I will like that movie? Or would I? I shouldn't say will, because I don't know if I'm going to watch it yet, but would I like the movie?
I would lean to no, but I don't think it's... Okay. I think there is a fun aspect. I think it's definitely... It all depends. It's a make or break if you enjoy Ezra or not. You might have to end up... watching it because, well, I don't know how we feel about that. Some of us talk about in the review that we felt like the performance was Golden Geek worthy for a lead. Now we're still halfway through a year, but I think there's a lot of nostalgia for DC there, and it's kind of, I think you'd have to put yourself in this position of, imagine watching No Way Home and not seeing the Spider-Man. Do you think you'd enjoy that or not? And that's what this is similar, because you have Keaton and Supergirl. You have some other things that appear and stuff like that. So that's where I'd say, if you don't think so, probably not, because there's stuff where you're like, I'm sure this means something to somebody, but to me, this is nothing.
I hear you. Yeah. Other things on the feed, me and you are going to be covering the first episode of Secret Invasion, which drops in just a few hours. I almost
forgot. I'm like, what are we covering? What first episode? I know we talk about Black Mirror, but I didn't think we were going to tackle them one by one. But yeah, you and me will be tackling Secret Invasion this week. So
and yeah, Black Mirror as well. I only have one more episode. I don't know about you. So at some point,
I got 3. So I'm hoping to try and get it done before you go.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah,
I was looking up, for one of our topics today, we're talking about Embracer Group. And I was looking through the IP they own, and they own this IP called Black Mirror, which I'd never heard of. And it's like this game series that has like at least 4 or 5 games. And it looks like probably a horror-y type of game set in like maybe the 1950s or something like that. I don't know. I mean, once again, I think there's multiple sequels and stuff, but I'd never heard of this. When I first saw it, I'm like, was there a Black Mirror game? I know Bandersnatch, like that. I wouldn't consider that a game. But that was kind of a surprise to me, a series I've never heard of. And Embracer's just sitting on it right now, I guess.
It's so funny because when you search The Black Mirror, which that's what the first game was called, The Black Mirror, all the news articles are just links to the TV show and stuff like that.
Yeah, no,
and
I'm sure it's buried.
Did you, for a second, were you scared that Embracer Group like owned Black Mirror and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen?
No, it was more just like, did they make a game based on like a concept from one of these episodes? If so, I feel like I would have heard about that, but
they were part of Bandersnatch. They they did that one.
You could consider that a game.
It kind of is,
interactive thing.
Yeah.
And what else? I mean, Indiana Jones retro is happening, and then
Yeah,
that
the last
movie
two
is coming
episodes
out.
will drop this week and this weekend, so you'll
There
get
you go.
3 and 4 coming up and stuff, and then like you were saying, yeah, the movie next week. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, there's some. It doesn't seem busy like it is like Secret Invasion, Indiana Jones. I think it's just because the month has just been busy. It's like, oh yeah, okay, like, that's all right. But yeah, we got that for the next few weeks, and then in July we got lots of stuff coming up, and then fall
Mm-hmm.
we'll have lots of game stuff coming up. So it's there'll be like I think a little lull in August, but then after that we're gonna be right into it. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So let's get into it. First, just talk about some of the games we've been
Mhm.
playing. Do you have any updates on the? I think you had like what 4 games that you've kind of are been bumping through. Any
Yeah,
updates on those?
so not any pro. I played another mission in Hitman, but that was about it. That I've stalled this week because I talked about Sudden Geek First before with Gwen's dance or so, which was this week, and her seasons usually runs from September to June. And if anyone has a kid, they'll know with dance, it's just like the last week and a half is just like it's practice. So it's a lot of like we're getting home, eating, getting her there. I'm watching kids, stuff like that. So a lot of non-game time and stuff like that. So I think this week now, because that and soccer is coming to an end and things like that. So
Mm.
my list is going to be worked on, even though I can't remember recently there was something I almost added to the list. So it keeps growing, but then I'm just going to get my backlog again. But Hitman a little bit more. And
What
then
level? What was the most recent one you
um,
did?
whatever the one is after the maybe not actually. Maybe I just replayed. No, I think I just replayed the house, the big what's in is in somewhere in Mexico or something like that with the twins or the twins with the cure in the first one. You have to like do a bomb.
Oh, I think that's in Italy, right? Sapienza, that one.
Yeah. I just
Yeah, yeah.
replayed that
Okay.
one. That's actually what I did. I thought I did a new one. I
Nice.
think I got to the new cutscene, but yeah, I just replayed that because my first one was kind of terrible. This one was a bit better. It's just a hard map. There's just lots going on and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So,
It's huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did that. I did probably for the next little while. I play a little more Midnight Suns because after our review, I just jumped back in for a little
Nice.
bit, and then yeah, so that's always go to. But I think I'm done. And then I did a little wrestling because next week I got a wrestling game coming out. I'm very excited because that other company I watch now, they have their first game. And I'm excited to have that one on the stream because they've just keep describing it as a very arcadey game. And they have these mini games. They have one that's exactly like the Mario Party, like head look one and stuff like that,
Oh,
where there's a
okay.
wrestler and he'll like do a taunt and you're supposed to out taunt him and stuff. So
What's the name of this
it's
of this
just called
game?
AEW Fight Forever, and there's stuff like exploding barbed wire matches. That's what they've hit on. It. They want to make it more. There's this N64 game, which is like the most popular wrestling game of all time, is No Mercy, and it's a very, very simple but very fun kind of button mashy sort of game. So I'm hoping that can be the case because anytime I want to play on the stream, it plays for a little bit, but it's tough because it has like all these schematics, like oh well, to run you got to do this and da da da. But
Yeah.
yeah, they have like mini games supposedly and stuff. So it's a day one for me because I'm excited. I want to support the company. So I was playing the other company's wrestling game, just kind of had like just some Jones and wanting in wrestling stuff. And then I tried this weekend. Me and Emily tried out the new map for Resurgence and stuff like that. It was just me and Emily because you
Okay.
were gone and Taylor and
Yeah.
Madison were on baby watch. So Taylor's like, I'm not gonna stay up just in case. Like that's fair.
I want to jump in. How was it?
It's good. So it's quite different. It's the Resurgence one that changed. It's very, and I don't know if you'll like this or anybody else like this. It's very building heavy. So before, how there'd be like in Resurgence, you had like the tunnel system, right? Or you had like sometimes long, just like grass or fields and stuff like that to get from one building to another. This is more. This is almost very comparable to Verdansk back in the day. I feel like that's what it is, but smaller because it's Resurgence, and they got some fun locations. Like they got their own type of graveyard. They have a city hall. They have a coliseum. It's much more feels like you are in a probably not New York, the best example, but something like that, like a bigger city that has a lot of
Mm-hmm.
landmarks instead of like there's no tunnel anymore. There is water, but it's not like the one before where it's like you had the outskirts where you could hide behind some cement and stuff like that. It's much more there's maybe water in between a bridge and stuff like that, but it's quite different that way. I'm kind of torn because I wish there was like an amalgamation of the last map and the other one because I did actually like the idea of the tunnels. Obviously, we died a couple times because the tunnels can
Mm-hmm.
get a little tricky and stuff like that. But I did like the idea of some, greenery in the tunnel and not just nothing but buildings because that's one thing here too. Where I feel like if you're a sniper, you'll probably like this type of map because I feel like it's just like it feels like Inception where sometimes you get there's just like buildings upon buildings and sometimes you go to the ground and you're just getting lit up by two different teams
Right.
at the same time because people have like got their posts. But at the same time, I feel like it's a really good map for, maybe the old one, you jump off a building, you're in a field and it's kind of over for you because it's like, well, I can't escape. Here you jump on the ground. There's like 4 different buildings you can try to go in, stairs and stuff like that. So it's quite bigger in the sense of, I don't think the map, I think it is technically bigger. It doesn't feel so much as big, just as there's much more layers to it, so lots of places to hide and things like that. So I like it as kind of a throwback to that original Verdansk one. Like I said, I wish there was some kind of combination, because that last what was it in the first Warzone, that last, I'm not sure if you ever played it, where it was like an 80s theme and it was like jungle and stuff like that. There's big hills, like the one with King Kong. Did you ever play that one?
I never did. No.
Okay,
I think that was
yeah, and that was the opposite, and that's what Emily and I were talking about, where that was just, there's so much open space. And I feel like the Call of Duty, because she watches Call of Duty streamers and stuff like that, she was saying that it was always a lot of complaints too, of like the last one of just like lots of fields, and it just feels like the Call of Duty base core like this, the buildings and lots of stuff like that. So like I said, I do miss, because sometimes it's just nothing but buildings, so it kind of gets a little samey. It's not, I still think that first resurgence they had in that old one, where they had like Construction Zone, all these ones, that's probably still the classic. We only played this for 1 day and a half, not like 24 hours, but just like a night and then another one.
Just a casual 24-hour stream for the
yeah, like I feel like it's a fun map, but as of so far, there's not any iconic locations where I feel like, oh, like this is great. So I'm excited to play it with you guys at some point here soon. But it's a good update though. It's a completely new map and stuff like that. So it was fun.
Even from the trailers and screenshots and stuff, I thought the aesthetic of it looked quite nice. Would you agree with that? Did it just even stylistically and the environment and stuff like that? How does that feel?
It feels, funny enough, for a town, it feels vibrant, maybe not vibrant, much more like modernized in that way, where some of the ones have an 80 vibe, or the last one had kind of a different country vibe. It feels like a modern North America one. So that got going on. And there is actually one place where maybe I'd say is, I think the problem is they're just a little bit smaller, but there's something that's like a zoo, and there's like a bird cage, and you like get on top of that, and that's really fun. So yeah, I would agree that for the most part, but like I said, I still haven't, and it's only been a little bit, I haven't found anything other than maybe that zoo that's calling to me too much. And there's stuff like, something like the Coliseum, maybe I'm saying it wrong, maybe it's just called a stadium. It's fun, but you almost never want to go there, because it's just like a dead zone, because there's just like, what are you gonna do? There's a train in this one again, so you got that going on and stuff. So there's like an actual, I think, kind of like a train station, which is just that's like the tunnel, where if you got the wrong door, you're just gonna get lost and die by smoke. There's like one rappel somewhere, and you're just trying your best. So so far I'd give it a thumbs up. That's the best way I can say it. Because I feel unqualified, because maybe in a couple of weeks, like, oh, there's this, and this, because even already I forgot about the zoo. But if some sections feel very samey, I'll say like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out, and I don't know when I'll have the chance, 'cause I'll be away this weekend too, and then I'll be in Kelowna. Probably won't have my Xbox for a bit, so I don't know when I'll get around to actually checking it out. But I am looking forward to it when that happens. So hopefully it has a nice long life to it, and I can jump in later. Any other games that you've been playing, or was that all the things on your list?
No, that's it. Because like I said, I got that wrestling game next week. I plan on getting a little more forward with Hitman at some point, but that game next week will take up probably most of my rest of June and stuff like that. And then, I'm not sure what I'll be. I haven't decided what I'm moving on to next. And I think originally I had Alan Wake next, but I was like, I feel like I'm less inclined on getting that sequel now, just because we talked about before during the
release date.
Yeah, just the release date. It's a tough one. So it's one of those that maybe I'm just going to kind of wait till it comes on Xbox. But I feel like I have to do the same thing as far as, I can't remember what I did recently, but I feel like maybe I just got to do like a trilogy of Alan Wake 2, and then also Control, because Control is like my oh god, why am I forgetting the name of the Prey? That's a game where it's like one that I've been anticipating, looks like a trash game, and it just has always been on my list, like bump into bump. So I might try to do like a trilogy of that, but that's the plan. Hitman and play some wrestling next week.
Sounds good. Yeah, for myself, I've got a couple new things and whatnot. So I've been playing some Diablo 4. I don't think I want to talk about that too much here, and I think I'm going to try and grab one of my friends who's playing that for an episode next week to talk more in depth about that. But I've been enjoying that. Jessica's playing that. I haven't played with her yet, but we're like friends on BNet, so I just see her cruising around doing some dungeon crawling and all that. So that's cool. And then, do you remember? I think it was last year's Xbox showcase. They showed off this game called Planet of Lana. Do you remember that one, Travis? It was like a 2D side-scrolling game, very bright and vibrant. There's somewhere in my memory like you were reacting to liking the look of that game, and that could be just a falsehood in my head.
I think I remember. I might have, because I think I do like the art style, so that could be it. That maybe I was on to that thing. So yeah, and when was this shown off?
I want to say it was last year's Xbox showcase. It's like a Game Pass. It's not a first-party game, but it's a Game Pass day one thing. So that just came out a few days ago, maybe a week or two ago, and
a spider. Yeah, is it good?
Yeah, so far so good. I've probably played for a couple hours. I think the gameplay of it, I would most compare it to like Limbo and Inside, those kind of 2D side-scrolling platformers where it's a little more low-key, a little more about the vibes and the energy of it, and then you're doing puzzles. But then even in between each like puzzle room, we'll say, there's just like, I feel like a 5-10 minute sequence of you just walking around, doing some very basic platforming. You're really just taking in that environment. But different from Limbo and Inside. At the Game Awards is when it was shown up.
2021,
Okay.
yeah. There you go.
And then maybe 2022 Xbox showcase, they like
probably
did a little sizzle reel where like, hey, here's some things coming to Game Pass, something like that. That would make sense there. But yeah, I guess rather than Limbo and Inside, which are obviously very dark games, even just in their visual style, but also like the content of it, I feel like this game, I mean, obviously it's a lot more bright and vibrant, and it sticks to that. And there is, it becomes nighttime, or you go in like a cave or something like that. But even the vibe, like there's, a big inciting event that happens at the start that's pretty tragic and pretty traumatic for your character and like the village they live in. But like, it's not that they get over that, but then you kind of get into the gameplay. You get this cute little companion, like a fantasy little dog creature, and you're like solving puzzles and stuff. And I feel like it's just a lot more lighthearted, which is something I'm quite enjoying, because I talked about this on Sidequest at the start of the year, but I finally played Inside over like the winter this year and didn't really like it that much. It didn't really live up to all the years of hype for me. And I like that this is kind of similar gameplay wise to that, but just a bit more lighthearted and fun. And man, those visuals, like once again, now that it's actually on my TV screen, full screened, I don't know if it's 4K or something, but it seems like it. It is probably the best looking game I've played this year.
Okay.
And just definitely one of the best looking indies I've ever seen. It's so freaking beautiful. Like just kind of this hand drawn aesthetic. There's so much layers and texture to it. There's so much movement in the environment with like the grass and the trees and stuff. You really are like in this environment, in this world. And I don't know. I feel like it's very immersive in that way, which is something that, I don't know, indie games aren't always able to get right, but there's something doing it here for sure.
There's something about some of these screenshots that look like a stage Bo was walking through and Bo was afraid,
Yes, there is a bit of that vibe to it as well.
I just saw this one where he's like he's in who the character is. It a he, she, they? Is there sex to them or whoever it is? Lana?
I actually don't know. I feel like it might just be purposely ambiguous. You have a sister in the game, but I don't know if they ever refer to you other than by just saying your name. So I'm not sure.
And the name's Lana, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where there's one which this looks fantastic, but it's something like they're at like a fishing sort of place where there's like it's like wood and stuff like that, and that's
like your starting little town.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it looks really good. So, I'll have now that I know it's on Games Pass, because I think that's the only sometimes negative with Game Pass is like it's just that so much stuff can come out. You can just kind of even if you go, oh, I really want to play that, it's on Game Pass, easy download. That's what happens and stuff. And that's why I try now to, if there's something bookmark it, like recently for me and Taylor, they're doing that Texas Chainsaw Massacre game that's Friday 13th, but that's going straight to Games Pass, which was very exciting because that's something
I will definitely jump in and check that out.
Yeah, no, and I want to try it because like those games I was happy for Friday 13th. Obviously now it's dead and everything, but those games sometimes can be like a tough sell for the price point, because it's like, well, if it's not that fun, you've played like $40-$60, probably 80 for us and stuff. So no, it's good to know it's there. I probably have to go on Games Pass and do like a saved list here soon. I should probably start writing. I'm gonna save this.
I mean, they have it. It's pretty nice. Like when you're browsing through Game Pass, you can just hit like add to play later, and then when you're on Game Pass, the app itself, and you go down at some point, it'll have that play later list to like remind you of those games. So almost like a wish list, but just of like, here's things you want to play in the future, which I like to use that help to keep track of things too. But
Added.
yeah, also like the music too is fantastic, and I don't know, it starts out almost like kind of a bit generic for the setting, but then I feel like it really gets quite nuanced and interesting. And then even like there's like these robot creatures in the world that are the antagonists, and sometimes they'll just make little noises, and then sometimes those noises that they make like perfectly sync up with the music, and the music like swells into these little moments. And I don't know, it just feels like every scene, every screen, every moment is like really well thought out, and like purposely giving you a lot of breathing room in between the more tense moments too. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that one. It's very, very cute. And yeah, I'm really curious where the story's going to go in terms of how dark it's going to get, or if it's going to stay quite playful and bright and happy. But yeah, it definitely feels like it's got a mix of vibes going on there. But definitely a shout out to Game Pass for that, because I feel like last year, 2022, was the year of like Game Pass indies. They were crushing it just month after month, week after week. So much stuff that was all amazing. And I feel like this year has been kind of lacking for me on the indie front. Not at least not as many things that have grabbed me personally. And so I've been looking forward to this game. The fact that it just dropped on Game Pass too is a nice little bonus. So there you go. The other game I want to talk about is do another little update here on Tears of the Kingdom. So originally I was thinking, okay, I'll probably get back from my trip, I'll play a bunch of it, and I'll do like a episode dedicated to it. But I find that I'm really just wanting to go very slowly through this game. So instead, I think, I don't know if the listeners are going to like this, but I think I'm just going to piecemeal and talk about Tears of the Kingdom for like months and like give you a little update here or there on how it's going. But kind of going back, Travis, when you were playing Breath of the Wild, did you have... Because for me, it was like, I feel like it was maybe 10 hours into the Breath of the Wild, which for some games, that's a very long time. For other games, not very much. It was about 10 hours in where I feel like it really clicked with me in terms of what was going on. Maybe I was a bit stronger. Maybe I understood more about the game systems when I had all the powers at that point. And I feel like from that 10 hour to like when I finished the game at 70 hours, like I was just glued to it and loved it and had a really great time. But it definitely took a bit before I got to that point when it clicked and I was really into it. Did you have that with Breath of the Wild, or were you more kind of like consistently in it for your playtime?
No, I was a bit of I was kind of sporadic all over, because at the same time I remember Horizon was out, so I was always going back and forth.
Back and forth.
Yeah, and I liked Horizon more, so that was, I think I enjoyed Breath of the Wild more when I had beat Horizon, because the whole time I was going back and forth, because I think I wasn't working at that point, and I did like okay, one day I'll do Zelda, next day that. Probably should have done the other way around, but with Zelda I just wanted to play it, talk about stuff like that. So I was always being pulled more that way, but eventually there was a time where you get to like, okay, I really want to continue on. I don't want to stop and stuff like that. So I feel like maybe I'd go a little longer, like 12, 15, but at the same time, that's good because I did have like another game right on the side competing with it too.
True.
So that's where for me, it was kind of a push and pull. So that's where nowadays I usually try to decide, because before I'd be like, oh, I'll do them both. But it just doesn't, unless I were to have that as a full-time gig, it just never works out, because you always are going to lean more towards one way, and almost one's going to get negatively impacted because you're going to get pulled that way. So yeah, but I think that's right. Like I said, I'd probably go more about like 12, 15 is when I got more locked in. And that's when I finally was really enjoying the game and stuff like that. So not that I wasn't before, but just wanting to. There's certain points where I feel like even when you get games, and I think you and me had the opposite maybe with Horizon 2, where eventually you get to that point, okay, I'm souring on it. But there's other games where you're probably Death Stranding's one like that, where it's like, okay, there's a big setup and lots of cutscenes, but now I'm into it. Where at first 5 to 7 hours could go either way, you know?
Yeah, it's taking its time. And so I bring that up because I feel like I'm having a similar experience here a bit with Tears of the Kingdom, where when I talked about it first on Sidequest with Kirkland, I talked about how I just finished like the tutorial area, like the first Sky Island, kind of the equivalent of the Great Plateau from Breath of the Wild. And I really loved that sequence. Like, you're giving all your powers pretty quick, and just the ability to make weirdo vehicles, and like a somewhat linear section, right? Because you're on this limited island here before you actually go back down to the overworld. I really enjoyed that. But then I found like the few hours after that have been like kind of a bit of a slog. And I think part of that is I'm so familiar with this game because it truly feels honestly like it almost feels like an RPG, like in a Bethesda game or something. When you start up a new character, it kind of feels like that to me, where I'm playing a new character with all these different kind of abilities, but it feels so similar, and it's obviously using the same overworld with differences, changes here or there, that it truly doesn't feel like a whole new experience. It feels like a 0.5, or it feels like a new kind of character in there.
Does the map affect with that too? Because I know that was the big like hoopla when it came out. There was like tons of screenshots of like literally it being pretty much the exact same. Obviously, you got like the upwards and stuff like that. But is that also hindered as well? Of like you just feel, almost what we could worry about with Spider-Man. I know they've added like, oh, you're gonna play this thing, but it's like, well, even when we get to Spider-Man 3, it's like, what else can you do with New York? Like you just do more of it. Maybe you go to like,
they just make it bigger.
City, yeah, make it bigger. You go, oh, this, Doc Ock's in Boston, he's in Chicago. We gotta go there, but
Yeah, no, I mean, there's obviously a lot of new content, a ton of it. With the Sky Islands, there's also a bunch more underground elements to the game and like mechanics related to that. In terms of the overworld, like it's hard to say, because obviously I played the game somewhat recently, Breath of the Wild, like in the last 3 years. But still, it's like, I don't know, was this hill exactly like this before? I don't know. Like, it's all big kind of grassy fields and similar looking hills and stuff like that. So I don't think that's necessarily the issue that I'm having so far. I think more of it is that I would love if the game was able to track that you played Breath of the Wild and then start you out with like 10 hearts or something like that. And start you out with more inventory space. Because I found that just having 3 hearts back at the start of this game, I went to so many different enemies and like just was getting one shot killed by like whatever their strike was, and just dying, had to restart and like, hey, go around, do this other thing. And I just found it like very frustrating. And it's like, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the mechanics of this game, but because it's so based on the gear you have in terms of how much damage you're going to take, that you'll just have so many of those situations where you just get one shot because you have been playing for 2 hours and you don't have any new clothes yet to defend you against these attacks. And then, the same issue with the inventory where it's like, man, collecting a bunch of Koroks again and building out my inventory again so that I can carry more than 5 things. Oh, like I wish I could just skip some of that early phase and just get to like the meat and potatoes and actually be able to enjoy the experience without getting one shot. And I also found there's multiple places I went where I was just stuck. Like I just could not progress by a thing. I had to reload a save. And then, so that's been a whole nother thing. And then even on top of that, like one of my biggest questions with this game was like, okay, I think they're doing shrines again, and hopefully they do some better dungeons. But like, what about the shrines? Because there was some great ones in Breath of the Wild, but there's also a ton of fluff. And I think once again, it seems like it's kind of the same percentage for me, where there's maybe 2 or 3 shrines I've done. They're like, okay, this is a really fun use of these mechanics, a really clever solution. But then there's so many where it's like bow training, like shoot this enemy who's moving with a bow twice, and then you get the reward of the shrine. I'm like, what a waste of like cutscenes and loading in here, and considering this is one of the 100 shrines in the game or whatever it is, it's like, oh man, there's going to be a lot of that again, isn't there? Which is like these half-assed shrines. So I think that's kind of the amalgam of like, I'm going to say issues, but once again, I'm hopeful that I'm going to hit that point when I'm past some of that crap, my character's a bit stronger, and I'm hooked, and then I could just like have another great 50, 60 hours worth of gameplay there.
Yeah, that's what I feel like the release week, the 2 things I heard was people complain about the effects or like the graphics, which aren't a big thing for me. I do agree with the narrative of like Nintendo definitely gets away with it a lot more than other people, because I feel like there's like, you look at stuff like, what we had with Redfall or Starfield, right? That comes out, but nowadays if Nintendo does it, it's kind of fine.
You notice the atrocious frame rate in this game, but you do think, a lot of people just kind of hand wave it.
Yeah, and people go, oh, why don't review some of that? So yeah, it just kind of, it all depends, right? We talk about those movies, TV shows, video games. If you're loving a big experience, you'll hand wave stuff like that. Opposed to if other things are bad, then you're really going to take it to task. But it was that, the map, and then I've seen a lot about the shrines where people go like, man, I just wish we had some really great shrines. And it's funny because I didn't feel like I heard that a lot the first go around. I heard that a lot from you, but I didn't hear that was like a consistent thing. But I feel like people were kind of like, with the first game, oh, they're fine. They'll probably be better in the sequel. And now that I've not played it, of course, but assumingly from what I've heard, very similar. I think people kind of like poo-poo that a little bit. But I was going to say, when you're bringing up like having to do things over again, not that you'll probably get to it anytime soon, but me and Taylor mentioned on the review that you probably would have liked that with Jedi Survivor, because Jedi Survivor, when it starts, you have everything from the first game, and it's really nice. It's not like Horizon where it's like, I've forgotten how to use the Force. It's just like, no, he has every single thing, the double lightsabers, all the colors, all the powers. They're just like either making them stronger or additions to that. So that's one thing when I opened up, I was like, man, that was so refreshing to play a game where it's like you're literally picking up from Fallen Order to this Survivor. And I hope Spider-Man's pretty similar too. Talking about
I
that,
hope so.
I hope so, because I just feel like that I don't need to do. I don't need to do. I'm fine with that. Even then, I was going to say, because you had Miles with the DLC, so technically that shouldn't. But I would allow them to cheat. Okay, let Peters have all his powers, and then Miles you build up. But I feel like they both should, because I feel like the build up should be when you're with Peter and you get the symbiote. You know, so that is. But that just is kind of like a classic Nintendo thing. I feel with those type of games, they usually start from core one, right? So
yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think that the issue is more with specifically the health and inventory slots. Those are like the two things that have bothered me, and now I have like 6 or 7 hearts or something, so it's I'm not getting one shot by every enemy, which is nice. But it's like, man, I don't feel like I needed to go waste all my time with these shrines. Like I just feel like I have to do this chore in order to enjoy the game, you know, and like that's not very good. But I in terms of that situation, like I think what they've done here, and maybe you unlock the same powers from Breath of the Wild, but instead of like having bombs as one of the abilities, now you can like fuse bomb flowers like onto your bow and you shoot that instead of having like a bomb. And like the ice, you know, you can make like ice blocks in Breath of the Wild. Like I don't think that ability is back at all. So like they've changed the abilities you do have, so at least I'm not having that effect where it's like, oh, okay, now I gotta wait 6 hours before I unlock bombs, and then wait another 2 hours before I unlock ice and stuff like that. So that's where it once again feels kind of like a new playthrough in that way.
I was gonna say, so hopefully it doesn't have like a Horizon 2 for you, where I feel like you had a similar thing there where it just never clicked into you loving that one. And same thing for me. So, and that's another game I always worry about that too, is when Ghost of Tsushima comes out. I really hope, because that has such a high bar. I'm like, man, because I liked that DLC, but I didn't love it. But maybe with Ghost, I'm kind of hoping that they explore more of that multiplayer, you know, what was it? Was it Legends, or what did they call
Legends,
it? Yeah, I'd love something like that. But hopefully it does turn around. You don't have that sort of experience, and, you know, give it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, once again, my highlight of the game still is the fuse ability, which lets you just combine pieces of wood or, you know, wheels and all sorts of random stuff to just make just these monstrosity structures, whether that's a vehicle, whether that's, you know, a boat or a plane, or just making some weird structure so you can climb up higher to get to this other thing. Like, that's been my highlight so far, and a couple of the dungeons have done a good job of making some of those mechanics just like allow you to have a bunch of creativity there. And I already feel like I've kind of broken a couple of the shrines by just coming up with my own weirdo solutions, and
Which
and
is
that's
kind of fun. I like
that
that
stuff's great. That stuff's great. And
Fun.
I just want more of that, and just more ways where it's really incentivizing you to use these mechanics and stuff. So yeah, I think I just need to get over that hump, and then I'll start enjoying it quite a lot more. And there has been some cool locations or areas I've gone to so far. And like on the map, like I was just looking out and there was like this giant cube floating in the sky, and I'm like, man, I really want to know what's in that cube. So I'm sure there's some great surprises still be had. And, you know, hopefully, even if the shrines are the same quality, this is maybe a fool's dream, fool's hope. But like, man, I hope the dungeons, or I don't know what they are in this game. I think they're temples. I'm not actually sure, but whatever the equivalent of the divine beasts are in this game, I hope those are a lot better, because those are not very good in Breath of the Wild. I didn't feel, at least. So yeah, I think that's kind of. Do you have any other like Tears of the Kingdom questions? I'm sure you've seen it all over the timeline and stuff. So most of your questions are kind of.
I was gonna say, are you enjoying the building aspect and stuff like that? Because I feel like that's the thing I see the most on my timeline is just people, well, either one just doing lots of bad things with these certain animals, whatnot. But is that an aspect that you like? Because I think it's really cool, but it's funny that it's an aspect that doesn't necessarily sell me on it. Because I kind of, you know, I don't know if I have time to build all these contraptions and stuff like that. I know it's a game you have to enjoy, but has that been big in your play style yet? Or
yeah, I think they. It's kind of almost weird the way they set it up, where there's just these like building supplies left all around, and it's like this construction company is, I guess, intending to build houses, but instead there's just a bunch of planks and, you know, random equipment. Then you can use that, and then usually when you do need to build something, one of those is nearby so that you can use those resources, or you could just, like, you know, use rocks and other random stuff. But usually, I guess that's probably a good part, is that whenever you need to build something, or whenever there's an obstacle that requires you to build something to achieve it, usually a bunch of the materials are kind of right there. So
Okay.
I find that it's not something that is taking too much time. And if it is taking
That's good.
time, it's because I'm wanting to be there to make something weird or more than I need to, just because I enjoy the mechanics of it. So yeah, that's definitely the highlight so far. And yeah, I can't wait to see how that gets furthered on. I think I have another ability or two to unlock yet. And so hopefully those kind of combine in nice ways. But I think the ability to kind of fuse your weapon to whatever it is in the environment or fuse it with those ingredients, that has been a pretty cool mechanic so far. A bit clunky in the way it works on the UI, just because I already have 40 different ingredients. And so scrolling through that to try and find the thing I want, it just doesn't feel great. It can take too long sometimes.
Okay.
But I'm sure there's maybe some ways I can figure out how to get more efficient and whatnot with that. Yeah. So there you go. There's my update on Tears of the Kingdom. I'll definitely report back. I'll probably play a lot of that when I'm in Kelowna and I don't have my Xbox and I just have my Switch with me. So.
And then plus you'll do lots of it when you get to a Game of the Year and stuff like that, because it'll be, I'm sure, talked about as far as whether it's on your list or just on other people's lists. I'm not sure. I think you were away when I made this pizza bet. Did you see me and Fanboy Clay's pizza bet?
Well, you think it's gonna win Game of the Year? Is that is what we're talking about?
Yeah, he picked at the Game Awards. I picked that it wins and he gets all of them. So that's where my money's riding and stuff like that. So I'm pretty confident it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't. In terms of everything else that's released so far, maybe a Resident Evil 4 remake, but I doubt it.
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing that has a shot is Starfield. I know Diablo's up there. People talk about it, but I don't know. I know you got Final Fantasy.
I don't say Diablo. What about Spider-Man? Do you think that has a chance?
No, I think it's an Omni. Gets an Omni, wins Best Action Game. Kind of the same thing it did last time. I feel like it just kind of has a... I don't know if it's going to have a massive enough jump to get there. That's my thing. I think it's going to be more of the same with a little bit more new stuff. But yeah, I just feel like it's that community that votes, that enjoys that game a lot. Oh.
Yeah. As you're fighting some hiccups over there. Yeah, I don't know. I have not listened to a single podcast about Tears of the Kingdom yet, so I'm curious to hear more of those thoughts. I just see that every video game website I go on has a million articles every day still about this game, so clearly it's doing... Even Polygon has on the top header where it's movie news, video game news, Tears of the Kingdom is the first thing. They've made a separate part of their website to accommodate how many people are interested in Tears of the Kingdom. So I thought that was pretty wild. Yeah, and I mean, as for myself too, I was just thinking about this yesterday actually, that I don't really have a game of the year yet.
I was gonna ask you, every year there's one you're champing, but I feel like there's not so far. I haven't heard that big Dylan pick where it's this is the one.
No, so. I mean, last year I was making lists left, right, and center, just always okay, where am I at? How are these things ranking against each other? And I've played 15 or so games this year, and I've really enjoyed a lot of them. But I'm not in love, and I'm not a game of the year love with anything yet. And I haven't even made a list because I just not I'm not passionate about enough about the things that I've played yet. So I think Tears of the Kingdom could get there. It might just take me getting over that hump and then really enjoying it. I feel like Starfield is looking like the front runner, but I also was going into this year thinking that Redfall was it was the battle between Redfall and Starfield. We all know how that went. So things can change even from beloved developers, obviously. Yeah. So I'm really hoping for a couple more. There is a couple indies that I have on my list that I haven't got to in this year yet. But I hope there's a couple surprises like a Tunic, like a Sable, like an Inscription, some big indies that have come out in the last couple of years that have really blown me away. I hope that some of those that I just haven't seen yet pop out of nowhere and can surprise me. Yeah. Okay, let's take our first break. And when we get back, we have a couple more topics to get into here. Okay, we are
more.
back.
We haven't even got any of the topics,
Well, our topic was the games we've been playing.
It's true. Yeah, 44 minutes of that. I was surprised. Oh wow, we've talked a bit about that. We got a lot of stuff on the go. So.
So a couple things here. So let's start off with this. So the Xbox showcase, we covered that, and then there was the Xbox Extended Showcase, which showed a little bit more of a few different titles, and I don't know. I'm guessing you didn't get a chance to watch this, and I only skimmed through to the things I was personally interested in anyway. But I think this is a really great thing that they've been doing. They did it for their January showcase as well, where it's just like tune in later for some more deep dives on a couple more games, and then even we'll have bonus announcements there too. And I thought that was pretty interesting because I specifically last year and probably the year before that, and for years now, Xbox has always had in their showcase like a bit of a sizzle reel of like, here's a bunch of indie games and stuff that are coming to Game Pass. And they had a couple of those in their showcase, of course, like a Payday 3 was one of them, for example. But they did some more of that here at this extended showcase. Like Phasmophobia has been a very popular game, and like that's coming to Game Pass, which they announced there. Lamplighters League is this really cool looking tactics game that I'm very much interested in. I think that comes out in October, so kind of a rough spot there. They announced some DLC for High on Life and also Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush, a first-party studio, so it's interesting that they decided to kick that to the extended showcase and not do it in their own first-party showcase. And then there were some other, I guess some smaller things, some other games coming to Game Pass and stuff like that. But I guess, yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention that. I think it's an interesting choice from them to kind of maybe hide some stuff, and really, I think it's probably a good sign from them that they're like, okay, we're going to make our showcase really tight. You know, we're not going to have any fluff in there. It's really only the things that we think are going to get a pretty big reaction or things that people are waiting for, big first party things, and only the third party things that are like really big deals to them. So I think that's probably good because once again, their showcase was pretty breezy. Yes, there was 40 minutes of Starfield, but even with that, it still felt pretty breezy. And I think it was a good call from them, and I hope to see more of that. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that element of it.
Yeah, just the two things. Yeah, because I think when they did it was during work, and then I just never got around to checking them out and stuff like that. But the two things I would say is I've always liked that idea. We've talked about this with conferences of do the snappy showcase, and then if you want more, tune into this show. You know, because I feel like if there's people that are wanting to see a specific game, they will go out of their way instead of slowing down a showcase. And two, I feel like holding things back is smart, but I also feel like another reason they're doing that is just because they have now Bethesda and they have Starfield, right? So in a day and age where Starfield and Bethesda was their own show and Xbox had to fill more of their time, well, they don't really have to do that now. So you get to hold back and you get to kind of prop up another thing. So I think all around that's a good idea that they should keep doing throughout and stuff. So
yeah, and then really the one thing I wanted to talk about from the extended showcase was that there was some more information on Avowed. There wasn't any more footage of the game, but they did a sit down with someone on the team, a creative director. I don't know what their role was exactly, but she was talking more about what the game is looking like. And I'm not going to say made me disappointed, but I think it definitely changed what my expectations were, where originally Avowed has kind of been pitched as Obsidian trying their hand at something like a Skyrim and an open world fantasy RPG, but it seems like over development, or maybe they made a decision a couple of years ago, is that they've really scaled the game back, and instead of it being like a truly continuous open world, it's kind of these smaller openish areas. I would say very much akin to the Outer Worlds in terms of, which is not surprising. That was obviously the last game that they made, but still, I guess I was expecting it to be a bigger scale than Outer Worlds. I was wanting more of a continuous open world, and I thought that maybe they would do that. It made more sense to do it with Outer Worlds as well, because you're going to different planets and stuff. So how are you going to do that with like a smaller development? You know, if you're Starfield, you can do it. If you're Bethesda, but if you're like a smaller development team like that Obsidian team, it's kind of hard to do something of that scale. But I found that because of that in Outer Worlds, there was really only one planet that you could truly get lost in and explore and like just be like, man, I don't even know where I am at this point. Everything else was small enough that it's like, okay, there's 2 or 3 points of interest, and then you're just walking between those, and you can go a little bit of a longer way, or you can go directly there, and that's pretty much it. And it made it so that multiple playthroughs of the game didn't have as much bite for me, and I did a full another playthrough of the second character where I went through and did all the DLC and stuff like that, and I actually came away like a little bit less hot on the game than I did originally, which is not what I was expecting, especially from Obsidian, who made New Vegas, which is a game I've played through so many times over, which is a huge open world and has so many branching paths and stuff like that. And so I guess I don't know if it's just an engine thing or what the difference is between what they did in New Vegas over a decade ago and what they're doing with the games now, and how they're unable to kind of achieve that again. And I am excited for their RPG elements and to see those branching paths, and excited to make multiple characters, because it seems like the combat system is going to be pretty good, if conducive to, like, I'm going to be a magic character, maybe like more of a knight sort of character, or a sneaky thief kind of character. But yeah, in terms of like the actual scale of it, I kind of have to set my expectations a little bit lower.
Because I don't know exactly, because you know this more than me, as far as them branching off doing their own thing. Like, what is the amount of resources they have over there? Is it something where this is kind of, is it good to cap it at this sort of stuff? They can make the game quality good, because maybe they could expand, do something bigger, but that might run them thin and might kind of use up too much.
Mm-hmm. I mean, ultimately, it's a good decision from them, because I mean, they know their limits and they're playing within it, rather than making some huge open game. Or even then, like, okay, we could make it all one open world, but then it's like there's a bunch of empty spaces with nothing to do. And like, I think that's really what it comes down to, is their team working on this game is smaller than someone like whatever it is, whether it's like, you know, GTA or Rockstar making a GTA or Red Dead sort of game, smaller than Bethesda making Starfield. Like, they just don't have that many people. And I mean, last year they released 2 games. They released Grounded and Pentiment. So obviously there's even sub teams within Obsidian that are doing things, and naturally those are going to take people away from that kind of one main project that I wouldn't say most studios, but a lot of studios, you know, have one main project, and then when it's like closing down, they start production on the next one so that everyone has something to work on. But yeah, obviously Obsidian is branching out. But I guess I was expecting as well that, okay, Outer Worlds made before the acquisition, now they're part of Xbox. They can probably get a bigger budget. Yeah, they probably have more resources to other teams within Xbox that can help with development in some ways. Even now that Bethesda's in there, I'm like, okay, is there some way that they can use Bethesda's engine, which they did for New Vegas back in the day? Like, is that something, obviously, Avowed is probably too far along to even do something like that, but is that something they're going to look to do in the future? I saw kind of a crackpot theory, which I don't know if this much put into this, but I thought it was interesting that maybe the idea was originally make that big Skyrim, like that sort of scale game, and then they scaled it down post Bethesda acquisition, maybe because Fallout is going to be an IP that they could then work on, and maybe they are like, okay, let's make an Outer Worlds scale game, and then Fallout will be our next one where we go to that scale, whether they go to the Bethesda's creation engine or they stay on whatever they make Outer Worlds in. Not too sure, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of moving parts with Obsidian. They're kind of like the Insomniac of Xbox, I feel like, right now, in terms of releasing tons of games,
just pump out stuff,
pretty quality stuff. Yeah, like they're crushing it over there.
Yeah, that's good. It is funny, because I know you brought this up when the purchase happened, but it is a funny situation for them to kind of put their stock in that team. That's kind of a lot of the former team from Bethesda and stuff like that, and now they're in this situation where they own them both and stuff. And I feel like, I wonder how they feel about that, because you feel like, you know, Xbox would definitely lean more into Bethesda as far as like a Fallout, a Skyrim, Starfield. Like, well, even if it's different people, it's the brand, right? So kind of interesting situation, because like I know Outer Worlds did really good performance, like critically. I don't know how it did sales wise though, so that's the other thing too. It's like, when it comes down to money, you know what, probably even if Starfield is, even if it has a Cyberpunk situation, Cyberpunk still sold like gangbusters those first little bit, right? So it's like, you kind of know what you're getting with that brand as far as money wise and stuff. So
yeah, it is interesting. Like, there has been the talk of the town, I guess, for years has been that Obsidian working under Bethesda all before Xbox and making New Vegas was not a great thing. Like, they had a lot of time constraints put on them, and I think there was some really just whack thing where it's like, you need to hit this amount on Metacritic to get like a bonus, and then they were off that Metacritic by like 1 point, which is, once again, why I absolutely hate that, you know, anyone would get paid based on a Metacritic score because of like one reviewer had done differently on the arbitrary number that they threw on their freaking review, that not even the guy who wrote the review necessarily gave it that number. You know, that's the thing that determines like some bonus. It's like, that's such bullshit.
Yeah, there's recently too, I think one of the people that used to work on the God of War said the same thing. Sony kind of has a similar system about that, or like, just like, as
yeah,
far
but
as
I
like
don't think Sony like deducts pay, if you don't hit that number.
No, but it's kind of something like it fit with the Days Gone thing, where
like
it's
maybe they give you a smaller budget on your next game or something, but
well,
it's not
that's
like
what it is.
not like the people in the
yeah.
trenches are gonna earn less money or something.
And of course, this was like a guy just kind of saying, so who knows if he fully knows. I wish I figured out the name, but I feel like it's kind of like the Days Gone thing, where because the game didn't review the greatest and still sold like all right, but his whole statement was like Sony expects you to hit this number when your game releases if you want to keep moving forward with them and stuff like that, right? And maybe that's why the Last of Us multiplayer game is dead. But
I mean,
it's not dead, but
I think also part of that guy was that it's like, well, Sony does give you the resources to try and achieve those things, whether that's like giving you more time to work on your thing, whether you need, well, obviously time would be more budget in that way, which is good rather than, like Bethesda did back in the day with Obsidian, where it's like, oh, you got to release the game in this date. But, with Bethesda doing Starfield, you presume DLC is going to be happening for years. I would assume that right off the bat. Maybe, I don't think they're going to want to do a Fallout 76 style spin-off with the game.
No.
But after that is Elder Scrolls, which we have to imagine is going to take years and years and years. So it kind of makes sense to, here they need something Fallout related. Now that Xbox has that IP, they want to do something with it. And if they make like a Fallout Tactics again, which I think has existed before, but give that to some other random team within the Xbox family to make something Fallout in the meantime.
Yeah.
If not, if you want a more traditional first-person RPG style one, Obsidian is like, that's who you go for because they've done it before and they did what many people to be the best Fallout game of.
But do they want to do it? That's the question too, right? They want to do it. They might not have a choice,
true.
but that's
especially if there's bad blood there. It's like, it's kind of sketchy territory.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I'm still very excited for Avowed. I guess I've calibrated it and I'm not quite as excited. I mean, the good thing for me is that Outer Worlds didn't have the best combat, and from the trailer, which they showed at the showcase, that was like, 2-3 minutes of just combat, and it all looked great. It looked like they're very just fun spells. It's very over the top and whatnot. So I'm a fan of that. And so hey, Outer Worlds with a fantasy theme and better combat, like I'm gonna quite enjoy that game still.
Yeah.
And I don't even have to buy it 'cause it's on Game Pass. So there you go.
There you
go. Let's talk about Embracer a little bit. The ambiguous Embracer. So
like Star Wars Empire, in my opinion, like when the
They're
more we
truly
get to this
evil,
way, just like you don't know where they came from. They just rose to power, waiting for this big deal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Embracer announced recently, Embracer's a huge publisher, if you don't know. A lot of people wouldn't know this because they very much float on the radar, but they own a ton of studios, they own a ton of IP, and they announced that they are going to be doing some restructuring, of course, the way they word this. If you read like the stuff they wrote, it's like very much for investors, people on the board. Like that's the way it's written is for those people, not for
it reads
us.
Very business.
Yeah, not for the people
release.
playing the game. And then there was even a line. It's like, sorry for the people who work for our companies. Like, we just don't know what's going to happen. And like, even like at some point we're talking to the employees in that way, but it was like, oh god, the most like evil thing where it's like, oh yeah, you might get laid off, but we don't really know. So just keep an eye out for that, I guess.
Did you see the quote about Lord of the Rings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll wait. But just like, it was not like, because I can't remember. Was this something they put out publicly, or was this something that came out and then someone kind of put this out there? Because I know that happens in wrestling a lot, where business stuff gets out there that's not supposed to be out there. So I couldn't remember if this was something that leaked.
I don't think it was a leak. I think it was just like
tone deaf then.
Some of these things from like investor meetings and whatnot. Like even like Nintendo's, you can see a lot of that stuff. Like I don't know why. I guess it's just for. If it's a public-facing company, like maybe they have to post some of that stuff. I don't know what it is, but I guess
it could be. Yeah, there's things you do have to do, especially. I'm not sure if they're publicly traded, but if they were, then absolutely, yeah.
But I mean, I guess it's also this thing where if they are going to be closing down a bunch of companies, they want to get ahead of it and have what seems like a good justification for what they're doing. Yeah. But I mean, we were talking about this in the Discord a little bit, and to me, it's just like this feels so illegal that for years Embracer can go around scooping up like endless studios. And yes, they're not picking up the A-tier stuff necessarily. They have picked up a couple A-tier things, but they're more like scooping up some of the middle tier, lower tier stuff. So you don't really notice it as much, even though they've been acquiring stuff like crazy. But anytime they acquire something, it's always like, oh, here's the big thing. They got Lord of the Rings, but then also like 5 or 6 other studios. Like just randomly tucked within like these one acquisitions, always like multiple. And I think right now they have more studios than any other publisher does. And yeah, just announced part of this restructuring, is going to be laying off a bunch of people, closing a bunch of studios. To me, that just seems like that should be illegal, man. You can't just go around and buy up all these studios, buy up all this IP, and then just fucking close that shit. Like, why did you buy these studios? And I know the answer, but to me, it's so wrong. It's so messed up. I don't know. Maybe it's not a shocking take or anything like that, but it just, but it could be a lot because they do employ a lot of people.
Yeah, it's funny because that's where when I talk about like publicly traded companies, like there's a very similar situation that happened with WWE, and that's why one of the reasons I watched a little bit less because that company just gets worse and worse. But it's a very similar thing where this other company was created, and same thing as Bracer here, where you have all these you have Sony and Microsoft starting to purchase other companies, right? So and developers, so it's like, well, we should get in that game because then we can become a behemoth, and Bracer can just be a name, right? And kind of a similar way where WWE, they bought all this talent so the other place couldn't get it. But then when they realized eventually, like, we don't need this much, they would just let them go. And it's not like you get a severance in that business. I'm sure you might a little bit developers, but you just let them go and you already maybe missed your chance with the other company, right? And that's kind of the same thing here. Is like whether you're developing a game for yourself, whether you maybe had an opportunity with even a Microsoft. The multiple companies have the whole time where you could have similar offers at similar times and you're gonna go one way or the other, right? And Embracer was throwing a lot of money around, so that could be the case. And now it's like either something shut down or now people are employed. So it sucks all around. It's interesting because you're right. I had not heard Embracer honestly till a couple of years ago once the movie side started getting into it, because I know your top tier developers, but many times if there's something I'll have to, even with this story, because we'll talk about Kotar and stuff like that, but I had to message you back, okay, is this for sure them and stuff like that, because they had this weird word statement, which we'll get into, but yeah, it's just disappointing overall, and it's what I worry now with this, what I worry with the movie side as well, where it feels like it's one of those kind of, shoot first, ask questions later. It's just, well, let's throw a bunch of money, buy these things, and they don't really know how to support them, or they don't really know how to set them up for success. It's just to have them and just to think, well, video games is a massive industry, so if we get these companies and make these games, we're going to bring in the money, but that's not exactly how it works. Same thing with and I'm not sure when you want to get to, maybe we'll get to it now. It's just the quote about Lord of the Rings is,
yeah, go for it.
It's a franchise that we need to exploit. And I get what they're trying to say. One, you don't say exploit in the public eye. And people have said maybe there's like a translation thing, so maybe that's it. But still, it's like that's not something you say. We talk about those all-time movies, TV games. We hope that the people that are making them, all of them have to make it for profit, but you hope that there's some passion there, right? It's the same thing like what we do here. We produce podcasts and we ask you to support us with patrons, stuff like that, because we say, hey, we can, and it's a legitimate fact, we can create more stuff that hopefully you like by doing this, but we're also passionate. And that's where when you have a company starting to use the words like exploit, that's where it's like, okay, now it's just the company that just is going for the dollar. That's the best thing you can have, because there's nobody you're ever going to find in that entertainment, gaming, TV shows and movies wise that will make it for free. Why? Because then they couldn't do it. They'd have a job, right? So you have to do it for some sort of profit. And there is a business, like whether it's Amazon, Disney, Xbox, PlayStation, Embracer, there has to be somebody that is just looking at the bottom line. It doesn't matter. We don't care how many people you want to please. You got to make us money, right? So that's where, even if you in public kind of have to put on a face, you should. And that's where I start to get worried now. It's the same thing. It was very similar a couple weeks ago where, because we were doing an Indiana Jones retrospective and they were making a show, but then they canned that. And the idea was Lucasfilm now is just working on nothing but Star Wars, right? So nothing else, other IPs, Indiana Jones, which, there's good pros for that. That's the same thing of it, you could get in the situation where I feel like we've talked about many times in the movie side with Marvels, where some people feel there's just too much, right? And I don't know if that's going to happen with these Lord of the Rings games. I'm not going to say there's too much, but my worry is that they're just going to make a bunch of games that are very mid to all right quality to try and bank on that. But I feel like for the most part, I can name you bad TV shows that are very popular. I can name you bad movies that make billions of dollars. It's very rare that you talk about bad games that make lots of money, right? If you talk about a word of mouth business, gaming might be the biggest one for that, because reviews usually come out quite, kind of early and stuff like that. It's out there, you get a purchase, and it's a bigger purchase to do, right? So like, look at Gollum. You weren't around for when that came out. That's just dead in the water now. And that's where it's just like, there's the odd time, like we talked about with the Cyberpunk, which still was relatively reviewed well. The only problem is that was they maybe, didn't say some things about it that were true. And also it's just had a lot of bugs, right? But overall, it's still not one of the worst games. I can't remember the last time there was a game that had like a red on Metacritic that went on to be one of the best sellers of the year, right? So that's my worry when they say exploit, is they're just going to try their best to send everything out. And it doesn't even matter. Look at what we talked about, like something like Midnight Suns. Marvel brand, great game, could not find an audience. So that doesn't even guarantee you success here. So I don't know. It worries me about the movie side too, because they also got Lord of the Rings. So now I'm really worried about both sides of the company. I really wish Amazon, just not that they need to own everything, but I wish they pony up the money there. So I don't know. I now have a multiple red flags around them going forward. It's tough for me to believe what they say, and it's gonna be tough for me to invest in the games that they preview, because I'm gonna worry, okay, why was this made? Was this made because it's a great idea, or maybe because, hey, we need something on the calendar this year with Lord of the Rings, do it, and whatever franchise they might get in the future. So
yeah, I wanted to quickly rifle off just some of the IP that they own, because part of this is that they want to really focus. Like, they canceled a bunch of things too, and they're gonna refocus and instead make things with the big IP, the higher budget IP things that they own, which of course includes Lord of the Rings. Some other ones would be Duke Nukem, Hellboy Metro, Borderlands, Red Faction, Saints Row, Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Destroy All Humans. So those are some of the other IP that they have, which, I mean, I'd really only say Tomb Raider is like the only massive one along with Lord of the Rings. Saints Row, I guess, is there, but that just had a pretty bad release too, so that is not a great sign. And obviously, like,
came and went too.
Yeah, like, and Gollum is not theirs, but like it's a bad look for like this thing of like people being interested in Lord of the Rings games. And I think part of Gollum, I mean, that's a very expensive game, so it's like when it comes out and it is what it is, like that's like not a good look. And I feel like they're gonna want to release $70 games or more, whatever it is, 90, 80, like expensive, games under the Lord of the Rings banner is probably what they're going to try and do. But it's tricky because I've Embracer has now acquired a lot of IP, but it's still a lot of the developers and studios that they own and operate under are not super well known. So I feel like it'll just even be an uphill battle in that way. Not that they can't make good games, but it's just like people aren't going to know what games they've made previously, and it's going to be like less known variables there. But yeah, I guess talking more about Lord of the Rings, like what do you think this really means in terms of them really trying to exploit it? Like, what do you think that will look like in the next, say, 3 or 4 years?
I worry what they're going to do is they're going to find, I hate to say this, you'll get like a live service game. Like, I feel like from that statement, Embracer is the group that they're going to put a board up. And I remember, again, I'm using movie examples, but it's because businesses, and there's a podcaster that was a comic writer, and they're having a meeting. This was like after Nolan. It was like, hey, what are we going to do next? And they're like, well, this is what we're going to do next. And they had a board, and it was like the top selling characters. Like, these are the films we're going to be doing. And the guy's like, oh, okay. Like, I thought we'd kind of have some story and stuff like that, but no, this is what we're doing. And I feel like that's the same here, where they will look at, okay, what could we do? I feel like a Shadow of War Mordor type of game will be that, because I feel like those did really well. So I think they'll be like, okay, let's try and make a clone of that. Obviously, it won't be the same studio, but something like that. Some sort of games for service, which just sounds like awful. Like that to me, like thinking of like an Avengers type Lord of the Rings game. There could be fun to it in a perfect world if it's great. Like, think about that. You get to play as the Fellowship, something like that. There could be something great there, and that's what I think they would have in their mind. But really, I don't think that they're gonna pull it off. I hope to be wrong. I'm trying to think of what other, but whatever it is, whenever they sit down, whether it's this week, whether it's from a year, and they want to match people, and I hope that's the other thing that sucks about the people that if they get games canceled, because they said supposedly the games that are announced are safe, which we'll talk about, but the games that aren't announced, those could go away. And that's the thing that could suck for people, especially if they're, just looking to make ends meet. It's like if you're working on a game you're passionate about, and they just move you to, hey, we really need this type of Lord of the Rings game. You're going to be doing this. Or, hey, that game you're making something very similar, but has a Lord of the Rings skin on it. The same way it ended up being for the best, but that Friday 13th game that did get canceled now because of the lawsuit, it didn't start as Friday 13th. It was like Camp Slasher, and they went to them and said, hey, this looks great, like what if we made a combination? That was different because the developers were making it as like a pseudo, if we had Friday the 13th, and they came and said, hey, what if you actually had it? I don't know if that's going to be the case with these developers. I don't think any of them would be making if I had the Lord of the Rings game. Maybe, but that's my prediction, is you will get the bigger IP or the bigger type of brands out there, maybe like a God of War-esque Lord of the Rings game. But again, that's easier to say. How many times did we talk about when that Halo Infinite was coming out? Like, this could be that God of War, the new, and it wasn't. It's not. Video games are not easy to make. It's a very tough task. So that's what I hope that these comments are not actually how they feel, because I think just have in their mind that, okay, we slap this IP on anything, it's gonna that's what will turn the ships around.
Yeah, I'm really curious where things are with the older titles in terms of, can they re-release those? Could they do ports or remakes or remasters of some of those old games that are kind of lost on platforms? Like, if you go on any storefront, even Steam, and you just like punch in Lord of the Rings, like not a lot of things come up just because the rights have expired from like these games that EA made back in the day. And there's like tons and tons of games that are just kind of lost time in that way. So I don't know, because they're developed by EA, I don't know if those specific IP and stuff like that are tied up in that way. But if they could find a way to get some of those and re-release those would be things where it's like, okay, I don't know who this individual developer is, but if they're doing a remake or a remaster, probably remaster is a better way to say it, of some old classic Lord of the Rings game, then that's a great way to like potentially, here, we're bringing this back, we're making it available on your new platforms, it looks great, and then like we can also learn more about the studio and the developers that are actually making these things, and then maybe that'd be a good way to get their foot in the door as well. If that goes well, and let's say they do one of these remasters and it's pretty successful, then that studio can go and make either more, I guess, or they can make their own original Lord of the Rings game at that point.
I think the only thing that's tough with those games, if there's a way they can skirt around it, it's tough because a lot of those have those actors' likenesses and face and voices and stuff like that. And I guarantee you there is probably something where they could do that, but if they do it, there's a portion of that budget now that's inflated because, well, now we got to pay X, Y, and Z because actors have all time in contracts, right? Like, hey, if you use this, and it depends, but that's where maybe you could just remake the game and I'd be fine with that. I don't know if you even could though, right? Because like even some of those games, a company could argue like, oh, this is more based around the film version of the game. Where something, at least like my favorite, Battle for Middle Earth, you could take that. It's not really about the movies and just change it. It's okay. It doesn't look like Viggo Mortensen. Doesn't look like Orlando Bloom. I would like that to happen, but that's why I think those EA games are unfortunately just dead, and I can only play them on my PS2, which is unfortunate. But
yeah, I think something like Lord of the Rings Conquest, I feel like that could see a new title. I don't know, once again, if they can specifically make a Conquest. If not, if they just make Lord of the Rings that has a new subtitle and it's like a similar type of game. But I just feel like that could very well line up with today's market. They could definitely squeeze like so much juice out of that in terms of money wise and like getting characters. They could make that just the worst thing ever. Of course, that's not how I'd want it to be. I'd want it to be you just get one purchase and you get all these characters and you have to unlock them or something like that. But I just feel like that could be grounds for microtransaction hell, and they could go down that route if they're really just looking at the dollars and cents of it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious how like weird spin-off-y things like Gollum are going to look for them, and if they're just like, no, we're not going to do anything like that, because that's a big risk at this point.
I think Gollum should have scared a lot of people away, which I'm always interested. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed that that company that made Gollum they have another Lord of the Rings game in the works as well, and that's going to be very interesting because I was such a I don't know. I get you always drop the big wall text thing, but it just felt like it was a weird addressing issues that weren't what people were having problem. They were addressing bugs and stuff like that, but it wasn't a cyberpunk situation. This was a situation where people were just not enjoying the game, but it's just like,
I know that was the weirdest thing where they apologized for the game being bad and not even just like buggy, but they're like, yeah, this game's not, like, they didn't say it like this, but they're like, yeah, this game's bad and we're sorry. It didn't live up to our expectations. We wanted it to be better. Sorry. That's the worst. That is like, you can't say that, man. Is there anything else with the? You mentioned KOTOR. Did you want to bring that up?
Yeah, because I want to ask that, because I remember I can't remember when we brought it up. I think it was a couple months ago when there were some rumors about the issues. There was the initial big rumors where it's like delayed, canceled. No, it's not. I have a new team. At some point in Sidequest, like I said, probably within the last 2 months, I'd asked you and you said like, oh, KOTOR's, probably still coming out because it's a big enough title. They want to get that one out there. Do you still feel confident about that? Like, gun to the head, if I ask you, hey, is KOTOR going to come out? Because I'm like, I'm a full no now because I just feel like I just feel like it's one of these things. It's just them saying they're like, oh, but the announced games are safe. It's like, yeah, but you're gonna lay off all these people, which I'm sure you didn't tell them that, right? Of course, now they're getting the word, but I much more put it in my mind, so I'm less disappointed that it's just not happening. I hope it does, and who knows what even shape it's gonna be in if it happens. But
Yeah.
that's my idea. It's like, okay, I'm just prep myself for that's a Star Wars game that still doesn't exist at the moment.
I would say I'm more like where you got the end of that, where I think it'll come out still. I just don't think it'll be very good because it's just been passed around a bit too much, and because of what's going on right now, that might even could get passed around again, or it could be worked on by multiple studios at the same time, which could just be a total disaster. But yeah, I think in terms of them really want high budgets, focus on the IP that they own. They don't own Star Wars, but like in this case, they have that license, whatever, to make this particular game. I think they can. I mean, they could simply look at Twitter and see that out of all the games that they are currently having development across all the however many studios they have at Embracer, that game is by far the most anticipated, the one that people want the most. And so I feel like they'll just do whatever they can in their power to get it out the door. And I think that's kind of one that even if it's not great, I still think tons of people would buy it and they would still make a good amount of money. If it's read in Metacritic, I don't know, maybe that's a bit different. But if it's like even in the 60s, I think people will still pick that up in droves just because there's so much nostalgia for that and there's so much love for Star Wars out there.
Yeah, like it's funny because I haven't. I wanted to finish the games, but I even recently, because I was moving, found it and reloaded up Night Coulter on the Xbox Series X. I haven't played it yet, but I've never played it on there because I have the disc.
It works on the Series X, eh?
Yeah, it does. You have to download the update, and it goes there. I think maybe because it's one of those classic Xbox originals, like of the first.
I wouldn't know. I would have maybe expected KOTOR 2, but I just thought with the rights and stuff that would have been expired by now.
No, it works. So that's where I haven't played yet, but I have it downloaded. So if I ever get the announcement one day, because I've been wanting to replay it, but I keep holding off. It's like, well, you might be playing a very similar game the next few years, so don't do that yet, because it is a massive game. It's one of these games that if I play it, it'll be time sink away from everything else, right? New and stuff, because it's just character choices, and I haven't played it in a while, so I have it loaded up. But yeah, no, they just took the simple update, and you're good to go. So yeah. Hope for the best, but I feel like just with Embracer, we're gonna get a lot more bad news and a lot more of mixed stories. But I hope I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the main thing I hope for is like I do not want to see another acquisition from them for at least like 2 years, and I want to see some big releases that are actually got the care and love that they deserve before they go out and do anything. And I don't think they should either. I mean, and they mentioned that they have some amount of debt that they're trying to get out of. It's like, what are you doing over here acquiring shit left, right, and center? Like it seems like the game plan here is like way too fast, too much too quickly, rather than kind of just building up slowly and building that strong core. And like, yeah, when you get to however many studios and stuff you have, the overhead in terms of like managing all that is insane. It's already proven to be unmanageable for Xbox with how many they have, and Redfall being a thing that Xbox just like was pretty much completely unaware of what was going on over there, and then they released it in the way they did. It's like for Embracer, that must be 1,000 times harder. They have so many freaking studios out there doing all these different projects, but even still, they're canceling a bunch of them. So there you go. Yeah, I hopefully the next news we can bring up from Embracer is like a good thing, because I feel like there hasn't really been many of those, but maybe it can be. Travis, thank you for joining me. This was a fun episode of Sidequest here, and yeah, I think next week, hopefully talking about Diablo. No promises on that. I gotta line someone up for that discussion, but yeah, hopefully that's what it is. And thank you everyone for listening, joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.